Fógur beag roimh hosníomlands guys, ní bhíon mé chur mór an rudí sús an seo ar an YouTube faoi láthair agus sin mariaal ghfuil ar Patreon inis agin. So idir inis agus dear na bliana ní bhaich beidir fi seán nó gáí seán ag dul sús an seo ar an YouTube gach mí a cháil ar an Patreon tá ceir nó cúg fudcréil agus í seán difriúil ag dul sús gach seachtain. Seán na difriúlaach so le éistearíis, léiríis, topic breakdowns, episódí sa bhreis, te ghfuil go weekly, botú nó go agus freisin fi seán gaming le tráchtarat ghaeilge. So, má tá simad sa content sin agus na rudí sin is féidir leat 7-day free trial a úsáid hall ar patreon.com/learn Irish online. Anis ará leis an ísean. Hey guys, kick-bhfuil sa fáilte rastr chuig fi seán ibre cuaig inar sra made easy. Mna bhfuil an sra se feici agus bríomh go bunasach bíonn sa grisú síos na rudí is gasta agus is deacra sa gaeilge ionas Comhaireamh bhfad níos éasca chun tuiscint. So today, guys, we're looking all at the numbers and a lot of things connected to numbers, such as counting things, counting people, the ordinal numbers, saying first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and also how it's going to have an effect then depending on what number or what system we're using on the noun which we're saying after. So I'm sure that already sounds a bit confusing, and it can be confusing sometimes, guys, but trust me, this guide is going to make it a lot easier, a lot simpler, and a lot more straightforward, and it's going to act hopefully as a good reference for you to come back to when you're unsure of something when using the numbers as well. So, má tá ré, tá much. So, the numbers, guys, what are the most difficult things about the numbers firstly? Why is it so tricky? Ask well, for me, there's two main reasons. One, we have a variety of different counting systems. In Irish, we're just a variety of different number systems, depending on how we're using the number. Are we using it to count people, things, or just in an abstract form, saying something like 4 o'clock, for example? And then two, the effect that it has on a noun, if it's connected to a noun. So, for example, if I say 4 bottles, it's going to be quite different from if I say 8 bottles. Equally, the way bottles behaves on its own, or briseadh, as well, is going to be quite different to the way it would behave in English. So that probably all sounds very linguistic and very complicated, but trust me, it's just a few fairly simple rules in themselves. They're just confusing in that they're quite different from English, but the actual rule itself, as well, is quite simple. So let's get into them. I'm assuming already, guys, you know the numbers, let's say 1 to 10, 1 to 20, 1 to 100. If you don't, there's a load of other videos on YouTube that will literally just walk you through them one by one, and obviously it's just a case of learning them off. But when do we use that number system? So I'm talking about a hain, a dul, a tree, a cahar, a cúig, a sé, a seach, ocht, a ní, a de. Well, we're going to use that when we're using the number in an abstract form. So what do I mean by that? Essentially when it's not connected to a noun. So I'm not saying, let's say, 4 pages or 2 walls or 3 houses. It'll become clear throughout this video. I'm literally just pointing at things I can see to save myself having to write it down. 1 microphone, for example. We're not talking about things like that where there's a noun directly on the number. It's something more abstract. So 3 kind of classic examples of this, and your main examples, as far as I can see, ascuelga, would be one when you're actually just counting. So let's say you're playing a game and there's only 10 seconds left and you're counting from 10 to 1, or on New Year's Eve, whatever. You'd use this system, a de, a ní, a ocht, a seach, ba ba ba, because it's not connected to anything. Even if, let's say, when you're counting down there, you're implying 10 seconds, 9 seconds, just like in English, you're not saying 10 seconds, 9 seconds, you're just saying 10, 9, 8, so we'll use this system. Equally, you'll get it a lot with time, saying 4 o'clock, for example, a cahar, a clog, because you're not telling me how many of something there is. It's not 4 o'clocks, as if an o'clock is a noun, it's more abstract. Equally then, same thing for, let's say, the score in a football match or in any match really. Just like in English, how we don't say 4 goals to 1 goal, we say 4-1. It's going to be the same, a cahar, a hain. Okay, same if you're saying whatever, 13-9, 3 a ní. Okay, even if we're applying the idea of goals or points, if I'm not actually saying it, we don't need to switch to a different system. But if we were saying, let's say, 2 books. How do you say that? Well, then we have to go over to our new system, which is this. Now, it might look a bit different or it might look a bit similar depending on your perspective, but the main rule we need to remember here, guys, is the 1, 2, and 4 rule. So this system which you're seeing is essentially just when we're counting things. Okay, if I'm saying 2 books, if I'm saying 3 microphones, if I'm saying 4 windows, anything like that. The good news is most of the numbers stay the exact same. You'll notice we dropped the little a from beforehand, but that hopefully is fairly simple because it's just more like English then, because we don't have that in English or in other languages. But the 3 numbers that you need to remember, the 3 that are going to change, are 1, 2, and 4. So if I'm saying 7 books, it's just seacht leabhar. 8 books, ucht leabhar. It doesn't change. But 1, 2, and 4, I can't say ein leabhar, I can't say dó leabhar, I can't say chathair leabhar. I need to say leabhar amháin, gá leabhar, ceithre leabhar. Okay, so those are the 3 you kind of need to learn off, the 3 that are quite different. So amháin, especially because of the order of it, that's because amháin more so means single than ones, therefore it's treated more as an adjective, but you don't really need to know the thinking behind it, it's just you need to know it goes afterwards. Gá, again, a bit different from dó, so gá leabhar, gá rud for 2 things, for example, and then ceithre, which is a slight change from a chathair. So ceithre leabhar, 4 books. So those are the only ones. If you look at 3, the one kind of stuck in between all those little irregular ones, it's still the same, just 3. Cúig leabhar, sé leabhar, seacht leabhar, it's going to be all the same. So we're just looking at 1, 2, and 4. That's our key rule and maybe the most important, useful, and most common rule you'll need to know from this video. What about double digits, guys? Well, we're going to follow this pattern. What we're going to do is going to go small digit, then the number, and then the big digit. So let's say, for example, if it's 13 books, 3 leabhar jeig. If it's 18 books, ucht leabhar jeig. And if it's 23 books, we're going to go is fiche, so and 20 at the end, or and 30 and 40. So it's going to be, let's say, 23 books, 3 leabhar is fiche. Ucht leabhar is fiche. Could be 3 leabhar is cuige, 53 books. And that kind of form, guys, of doing small digit, then the noun, and then the big digit, is going to be really kind of common throughout. We're going to go and do the dates later on in this, then it's going to come in handy. And just for anything, if you're saying 18 people or whatever, you'll see it over and over again. Right, then we have the ordinal numbers, guys. What this is just, let's say, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th. And what we have here, we have 3 things we need to remember. 1, or in other words, 1st, is going to be quite irregular. 2nd, also quite irregular in the sense it doesn't have much kind of similarity to the 1 and 2s we looked at before. And then 3rd and up, so 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, all of those are going to follow basically one rule and one pattern. Okay, so again, sounds confusing, stick with me, guys, don't worry, a lot simpler than it looks. First is just going to be céad, so the first book, let's just stick with book for now because it's an easy one, can't take any shavus or anything, on céad leabhar. Okay, the first book on céad leabhar. The second book on dara leabhar. And then 3rd and up, they're all going to take a kind of a bhfad sound at the end, guys. And on the spelling as well, of course. So on tríú leabhar, on chathrú leabhar, on cúgú leabhar, on séú leabhar, on sachtú leabhar, on uchtú leabhar, on níos leabhar, on deich leabhar. Okay, so they're all just taking a little U at the end. And that's the important thing to remember. A lot of these 1 and 2, we're going to see it when we go into counting people. So 1 and 2 are the kind of ones you just need to learn off. They're going to be very irregular. We saw it even with the one previous, except there's 1, 2, and 4. And then from kind of 3 and up, more or less, it's going to be a lot simpler, or they're going to have the same thing in common. So there we need to remember céad, dara, and then the bhfad for afterwards. So if I'm saying something like the 5th day, and this also comes in handy for dates, which we'll get onto later on cúgú lá, or if I was saying something like the 9th thing, on níos rud, the 9th thing. What about double digits with these, guys? Well, the main time you're going to be using these in the double digits, you'll find, is when you're saying something about a century. It's the 18th or 19th century. And it's the same as what we looked at earlier. So it's going to be on níos hís jeig. Just put a little H there to separate the vowels. On níos hís jeig, the 19th century. So smaller digit, or in other words, the 2nd digit in English, then the noun, and then the jeig. Right, counting people. So this is one thing which is very different in Irish, guys, compared to other languages, is we have a different system for counting people than we do for counting things. I'm not actually sure is there many other languages at all in Europe that have this. Even Scots Gaelic, I believe, which is very similar to Irish, doesn't have it, I'm fairly sure. So what do we do when we're counting people? Well, again, we just have a different system that we need to learn off, but thankfully, kind of like a mix of the last two, basically, we can learn 1 and 2, there's 1 and 2 people off. It's quite irregular, it's quite different, just need to know them. And then 3 and up are all going to follow a certain pattern. So 1 is actually just going to be a 1, again, now we'll need to connect something to it. So then a 1 person. Or even if I'm not implying people, guys, it's just any type of a person. So it could be a student, for example. 1 student, mac a 1. Equally then, 2 students is going to be Bert's walk. Bert's walk. Don't worry about the H for now. We're going to get onto that really soon. Bert's walk. So Bert's for 2 when we're counting people. It could be 2 nurses. It could be 2 firemen, 2 doctors, 2 workers. It's always going to be Bert's. Guys, the good thing is if we're just saying 2 people, we can actually just say Bert on its own. Okay, you can put chun afterwards for person, but even easier just to say Bert and it implies 2 people if there's no other noun afterwards. Okay, and then from 3 and up, they're all going to have a kind of or R sounds at the end. Okay, so it's going to be truer, caher, cougar, shesher, shachter, uchter, leaner, jetner. Okay, so again, if I just say, let's say cougar on its own, then I'm saying 5 people. I'll put the din afterwards, but no need. It's better just to leave it. Cougar for 5 people. Or I can put something afterwards. So let's say 8 sons. Uchter mac. Uchter mac for 8 sons. So that's how we count people. Right, that's basically all the counting systems learned off. As okay, so we have the abstract ones, which you already know, I'm sure. Then we have the counting things, so we need to mainly remember the 1, 2, and 4 rule. Everything else will essentially stay the same. Don't forget to drop the little a also, but I think that normally comes naturally to people. We have the ordinal numbers, so K, Dara, and then the bhfad, all the ones after. Counting people, so a 1, Berts, and then put the little R or all the ones for counting up from 3. And now we're going to move on to how it affects the noun slightly, guys, afterwards. So you might have noticed me there when I was saying 2 sons, I said Bert's walk. Even though the base word for son would be mac, and in plural, it would be mick. So why in the world would I go walk? Well, it probably seems really confusing, but essentially we have 2 rules. Guys, the first one is just always after counting, we keep the noun in singular. Ask why that. You might have seen this before if you use couple for a couple or a few. How we always have the following word in singular. So let's say rud for thing, ruddy for things, but I'd always say couple rud, a few things. So it's as if in English if I said a few thing. Okay, so it doesn't translate that well, but this is how we do it. We always keep the noun in singular. And it's the same when we're counting. Okay, so if I'm saying 4 things, I'm saying kera rud. I'm not going to say kera ruddy. If I'm saying 8 things, ucht rud. And then same for people. In terms of, let's say, mac there, I'm going to say Bert's walk. But then why do we have the H? Why isn't it just Bert's mac? Well, that brings us on to our second rule. It's a bit more confusing. It's the 2 to 6, 7 to 10 rule, guys. Okay, so what in the world is 2 to 6, 7 to 10 rule? This focuses on H's and R's, guys, which, especially if you're starting off, don't worry too much about them. If you said Bert's mac, no one's going to care. It's fine. But as you move on, as you get better with the language, that's where you want to kind of polish that stuff up. So maybe this part of the video might be referenced to come back to in a few months or a year or whatever. But essentially what it is from 2 to 6, the noun is going to take a H if possible, and then 7 till 10, it's going to take an uru. So budgel for bottle is always a great example for this, guys, because it can take both the H and the uru. So 2 bottles is going to be ga budgel. Let's say 5 bottles kuig budgel, but then 8 bottles ucht model. Ni model, 9 bottles. Okay, so H from 2 till 6, and then uru 7 till 10. You might find some places online, some teachers tell you it's 1 to 7, which takes the H. That is technically true if you said something like ein vodel a 1. So that's actually a form we can use, is we can use the ein and the 1 together. We can say ein cut a 1, 1 cat, for example. Ein wadra a 1, 1 dog. But most people don't do that. Most people don't use the ein, they just use the 1. And if you're just using the 1, you don't have to use the H. So in other words, I think it's easier, just never use the ain with the awan, just use the awan on its own. It's easier to remember, it's shorter. And then remember this rule as 2 to 6, 7 to 10. One little kind of caveat that doesn't really fit into anything here, because it's just a little extra, but it's quite useful, is that when we're saying the two, so the two books, it's going to be on da. Okay, so it's not going to be ga or do or anything like that. It's just a little irregularity. It's going to be on da. Now you might be thinking, well, that's not that useful. It's not going to come up too much, but it's our main way of expressing both. Okay, so if I want to say both books, I'm going to say an dá leabhar. If I'm going to say both and it's quite general, often I just say an dá ceann. It's like both of them or both of the two, basically. Okay, the 2 days or both days, in other words, an dá lá. So that was just something I kind of came across when practicing or prepping for this video, because that's actually something that doesn't really fit into any of these lists or rules, but it's going to be quite useful, hopefully. So an dá for the two, or in other words, both. And the last thing I want to talk about, guys, is dates. Obviously, we're having to use these all the time, whether you're talking about your birthday or scheduling something or saying what date it is. So the good news here is we're just using the ordinal numbers, like it would copy over from English. So in the same way, I would say the 6th book, and I'd also say the 6th of June, or whatever. It's going to be just the exact same here. I'm going to say, for example, on Siad law, we always say the 6th day. It's not like in English where we kind of just say the 6th and don't put a noun. So I'm going to say on Siad law, the bhfad of July, the 6th of July. Then the double digit ones, similar pattern to earlier, like we had it on níos, the 19th century. So if I'm saying the 16th of July, I'm going to say an Siad lá déag de bhfad. The 16th day. Day is my kind of noun going in the middle, like the form we talked about earlier, of the month of July. An Siad lá déag de bhfad. Similarly, if I'm saying the 26th of July, an Siad lá is fiche de bhfad. For example, the 26th of July. The one little caveat and last thing I promise, guys, in this video, it's going to be very irregular, is if we're saying the 21st, we're not going to say an céad lá is fiche. Again, like, it's not a big deal. If you say that, everybody's going to understand. It's not really even seen that much as a mistake, but if you really want to get it kind of on the laces perfectly correct, it's going to be an tainú lá. An tainú lá. And then the same after that is fiche. An tainú lá is strucha, the 31st of whatever month. Okay, so that's a small little caveat. Don't worry too much about that. Probably the least important thing in this whole video, guys. So feel free again to go back all the different parts of this video, guys, especially the bits that maybe you're not fully clear on. But now we're going to go through a few sample sentences, and hopefully you're going to be able to get at least some of them, maybe even most of them, maybe even all of them correct. Don't worry if you can't. Again, this might be a bit challenging if you're only getting started with a lot of things to do with the numbers and counting. But these are the 7 sentences. So we have the 6th person, 6 people, 4 hours, 8 bottles, 2 sons, 3 books, and the 24th of August. Okay, so I'm going to pause, or I'm going to let you pause here. Get a pen and paper out, try and sort them out. Again, feel free to go back to the previous bits in this video to help you. And then when you think you've put in your best effort and you've got them as close to being fully correct as possible, continue here and I'm going to walk through them one by one. So, an céad ceann, because the first one is the 6th person. The 6th person, okay, so I'm using my ordinal numbers here, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th. It's from 3 and up, so I'm going to add my little bhfad. It's going to be an siad duine. Now, this might have caught you out because you might have been thinking, I'm counting people. I suppose you are kind of counting people, but you're not saying 6 people like in the next one. You're saying the 6th person. So it's ordinal numbers. An siad duine. 6 people. Then again, we're going to go to our counting system for people. 3 and up is going to be that little sound at the end. So shesher. Shesher for 6 people. I don't need to add duine on, really. There's no point. I can just say shesher. 4 hours. What am I counting? I'm counting a thing. It'd be different if it was 4 o'clock and it was abstract, but here I am actually counting, telling you how many of something there is, basically, which ticks our list, or kind of ticks our check, our litmus test for the counting system. I'm going to use my 1, 2, 4 rule. I'm going to go to Kera, or often about hours, you'd say Kera or on clig to separate it from 4 times instead of 4 hours. 8 bottles, I'm counting again, so I'm just going to say ucht. It's not within the 1, 2, 4, so I don't need to change it really. So I'm going to say ucht. Budgel is bottle. but we need to remember our 7 to 10 rules, therefore it's going to be ucht mudgel. Again, with one like that, the most important thing, is just to remember to keep budgel, let's say, in singular. Don't worry too much about if you said ucht budgel instead, it's not a big deal. It's just if we want to get fully right. And as we're moving on, trying to concentrate more on those things. 2 sons have already kind of given this one away a small bit, I think, from saying it earlier. But all I'm going to do is counting people. So I'm going back to my system. 1 and 2, I'm going to need to learn off. They're a bit irregular. So I've got birch for a 2. I'm going to keep mock in singular. But then because it's in between 2 and 6, it takes a little h. Birch walk for 2 sons. 3 books. 3, my counting system for counting things. Doesn't change, it's just 3. And then lower, good thing about lower is it can't take a H. So it's just going to be 3 lower, fairly simple. And it's going to stay in the singular. If I, let's say, had something else, guys, to think of an example. 3 dogs. And I should mention with animals, we're always going to use the counting things system as opposed to people. I'm going to say 3 wadra, because again, it's 2 to 6, so therefore it's going to take a H. And the 25th of July, I'm going to say, an cúgu lá is fiche to bhí lúnasa, the 25th of August. An cúgu lá is fiche to bhí lúnasa, 25th of August. Okay, going to my ordinal numbers, going to remember for double digits, I'm kind of saying smaller digit, noun. In this case, we're going to use law always when counting with dates. We can't just say 25th. Like in English, we need to tell me the 25th what is the 25th day, the 25th person, the 25th whoever. So the 5th day and 20 basically is our format there. So, guys, hopefully that all makes sense. I know it's a lot in there, but as I'm always saying with these videos and same over on the Patreon, feel free to just go back and watch it bit by bit. The timestamps, this lesson should help as well. I'm going to go and try put timestamps over on the old Made Easy ones as well. But hopefully that all makes sense. And just bit by bit, again, don't be worrying about small rules too much for now, especially if you're only getting started, such as the H's and the R's. The main thing is to keep the noun in singular. The main thing is remembering your 1, 2, and 4 as well. Remember, we'll have a different system for counting people, different ordinal number system. Those are kind of your 4 or 5 big things. And then you've got smaller details, such as on da, such as 2 to 6, 7 to 10, kind of underneath there. Okay, so there's levels of importance to all this. It's not that all the rules are of equal importance. Sinné, so tásúlaim grabh é sin solar nó níos soléire ná mar bhí sé rih aníos an ionas agus tásúlaim gur bhain sibh tarbha agus taitneamh as aníos. Ba mar as le fhís an nua an seo ar an YouTube beidir gan caiiciis nó trí seachtain, guys, tá ó bhfad níos mó content ar fáil ar an Patreon mar dúirt mé tús nó ís an seo, so tásúlaim gur féidir leat beidir 7-day free trial é úsáid nó just dul an sin agus fécinn ar cad atá ar siúlainn hall ar an Patreon. Ionas, guys, míle buchas slán go fóill.